we're talking episode 3 of Welcome to Derry. Now you see it. Stay tuned. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. I appreciate you tuning in for another brand new review. Tonight, we're going to continue on with our coverage of the first season of Welcome to Derry. We are talking episode 3, Now You See It. Folks, we have been covering Welcome to Derry all season long thus far. We're going to continue on till we get to the end of it as well, too. So, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button if you're trying to get more Welcome to Derry coverage. We have a lot of great horror content on the channel right now, and I'm going to tell you about what's coming up here at the end of the review as well, too. But let's not waste any time here and jump right on into things. If you have not had a chance to check out the episode Now You See It of the first season of Welcome to Derry, we end up following a young boy named Francis Shaw who has an encounter with Pennywise after visiting a fair and ends up getting saved by an indigenous girl named Rose. Now we find out that Francis is the commanding officer of Leroy Hanlon that we're watching in the present, so there's a connection directly to Pennywise. Francis is looking to channel Pennywise's power again into a way that the U.S. military can use that in the space race against the Cubans and the Russians at this point. But when he sends Dick Hallorann and Leroy Hanlon out on a reconnaissance mission using Hallorann's shine, whatever you want to call it at this point, to try to get closer to Pennywise and find more information, not only does Hallorann end up finding himself in Pennywise's lair, but Pennywise seems almost taken aback by the fact that somebody was able to track it down and infiltrate it as well too, and is almost able to get Hallorann to not only kill himself, but to kill Hanlon as well. And we know that is likely going to lead to some kind of standoff, because the entire point here of involving Leroy Hanlon is that due to the damage to his amygdala, he does not suffer any kind of fear. So he is the perfect person to stand up against Pennywise. But obviously, given what we know about the events here in the book and the movie, there's no way that that's going to end on a positive note. Now, on the other side of that, Lilly is released from Juniper Hill after only a short stay there and decides to immediately make amends to Ronnie and let her know that she's not only going to tell the authorities what she saw here to try to clear Ronnie's father's name, but she's going to try to get proof as well too, and convinces Ronnie, who then the two of them go to convince Will Hanlon and his new friend Rich that they need to try to somehow get a photo of Pennywise, all the different apparitions that he's appeared in now, as a way to convince the authorities that something else is going on and Ronnie's dad is not the culprit in all these deaths that have happened here. Now, the four then end up going to the Derry graveyard and try to commence, I guess you'd call it a seance at this point. Rich, who goes to his Latin American roots, talks about how he knows how to raise a certain kind of spirit based on a ritual that his relatives have done at a certain point, and they commit this ritual not knowing, obviously, what Pennywise is and how Pennywise conducts itself against all these children and adults that it encounters here in Derry. And they do end up being able to conjure Pennywise, but he treats the children, like I've seen online here, kind of like a ride in the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, to where they're encountering all these ghosts and spirits in the Derry graveyard. But even with that, we know that there is actual danger present in this case here, and Will Hanlon is barely able to escape with his life as he is able to get a photo of Pennywise in the clown form, and now the four of them seemingly have proof that would end up being something they could take to the authorities to maybe clear Ronnie's father's name. So we had a lot that was going on here in episode 3 of Welcome to Derry, but I have seen some not great feedback for that, and that's what we're going to address here in the points that I'm bringing up here tonight. And we're going to start here by talking about the fact that Juniper Hill is over too quickly. Now, we saw in the previous episode, Lilly ended up having what she said about the incident at the theater kind of twisted by the police chief in order to actually get a arrest on Ronnie's dad. But the whole thing was they were hanging over her head that if she didn't change her story, she would end up getting sent to Juniper Hill, and she gets sent there anyway. And the way that they talk about it in Lily's past, we're supposed to have this idea here that it's the worst place in the world, and that if you go there, you were never coming back out again, that going back a second time would truly be the end of anything and anybody that we know as Lilly as she presently is. But she's out of Juniper Hill only a few days later. Now, I can agree with folks who are frustrated with that decision, because the problem is that if you're going to set Juniper Hill as this place that nobody wants to go to, then you can't have Lilly getting out of it like that. We didn't even spend an episode with her in that mental institution, so it's almost like there's no real stakes for her being sent back. But at the same time, though, I imagine that we can't really devote all that much time here to Lilly being there in Juniper Hill, because again, if this show does get greenlit for season 2, the idea is we're not staying with these folks that we're watching here right now in the 60s. We're going back even further at this point here, so we can't follow up on all these characters. So I somewhat get the idea that we don't want to stay in Juniper Hill, even though we're only in the 3rd episode, but it seems kind of silly to have it mentioned this quickly and nothing coming out of that at all. Second point we're going to talk about, Francis Shaw isn't long for this world. So we find out that James Remar's character, who is the one that brings in Leroy Hanlon into the project to try to track down Pennywise and again use that for the US military, Francis Shaw actually did have an encounter with Pennywise as a child. Him and his father go to a fair, and he ends up going to a freak show where he encounters somebody who likely isn't Pennywise at that point. But later on, when Shaw ends up meeting Rose at a random water station while they're coming back into Derry, Francis ends up running off into the woods playing a game with Rose and ends up getting hunted by Pennywise at that point, and takes the guise of this freak that Francis saw at the carnival just a little while ago. Now, Francis escapes with his life, and this seems to fuel the idea of him using Pennywise against the Cubans and the Russians in the missile crisis and everything. But here's the thing, I hate to say it, but I can't get away from the fact that we know that in the modern day telling of it, whether it's the original film or chapter 2 in this case here, we know that the military isn't mentioned, and anything that they're doing with Pennywise doesn't come up as well too. And I hate coming back onto that, but that has to mean here that this obviously isn't going to work out. And on top of that, that would mean even further in this case here that we likely aren't going to be seeing Francis Shaw survive the end of this season. There's a lot of characters in here that I do not expect are going to make it out alive in this particular case, but it's a problem here because I like the link that they're giving importance here. We don't want to see James Remar show up on screen for no reason at all. But it also sucks because we know that this character can't actually do anything significant to help the Losers Club in the present day time of the It films. And therefore, whatever he's doing right now has to absolutely end in failure. And I wish I could look at this show and not keep that in the back of my mind, but I can't. It's stuck there. It's not allowing me to get past it. I'm still enjoying it here, but it hurts that military, the military side of the plot, honestly, just because of the fact that we know this is going to crash and burn so hard. I appreciate the kid's story far more than I am following around the military right now. To our third point, there are no mysteries for Leroy Hanlon. So Leroy finds out that Dick Hallorann did participate in the attack on him just a few nights ago. Now, he thought that it was very likely to be one of the soldiers that he met in the first episode that clearly didn't respect him, has an issue with black people as well, but it turns out that's not the case. And again, as we knew, this was a test to make sure that Leroy was who he said that he was here. And again, Hallorann finds out that, yeah, Leroy doesn't have an issue with fear. That what Francis Shaw found out, that Leroy does have a damaged amygdala, which means he can't feel any fear at all. Hallorann finds that out as well too, and makes it very clear he is not going to mess with Leroy in the least bit, because a man who's not afraid of anything is not a man that you ultimately want to mess with. And to me, that really screams that Pennywise is going to have a reckoning here with Leroy Hanlon sooner than later. And that makes all the more sense given how important Mike Hanlon, his grandson, ends up becoming by the time that Pennywise ultimately gets defeated. So while I'm not enjoying this military storyline that they have going right now, I can't lie and say I'm not enjoying the characters and enjoying their journey to what I have to assume is an ultimate end for them. To my fourth and final point, the Haunted Mansion. I have seen a lot of chatter online here about the finale, the third act here of Now You See It, and the fact that Ronnie and Lilly, Will and Rich end up going to the Derry cemetery, and they try basically a seance to conjure Pennywise out, and so they can get the proof, the photos that they need to actually show that, again, Ronnie's dad didn't kill these kids in the first episode, and get him out of his eventual transfer to Shawshank. Pennywise, though, we know is not going to make things that simple. So the thing is, after they carry out this ritual, Pennywise starts to haunt these kids, kind of like it works in the Haunted Mansion, where all these ghosts and spirits are popping out and scaring the hell out of all of them. And I think that a lot of people have issues with this portion of the episode because it kind of feels like these kids aren't in any danger at all. And considering what we've seen from Pennywise thus far in this series, as well as in the films, it doesn't really gel together. I get that again, this seems like Pennywise is giving them a little bit of leeway instead of killing them all, but that doesn't change the fact that at the end of all of this, Will Hanlon barely is able to escape with his life as he ends up getting a photo of Pennywise in his clown form. So I kind of think the point of the spirits and the ghost here were really just to add in the idea that, well, you're not in any real kind of danger with what's going on right now, but we should know better that that's not the case. If one of those ghosts managed to get a hold of the kids here, I don't think it would have gone as well as a lot of people online are acting like it would have gone. Pennywise would have tore those kids up. They obviously didn't actually conjure any kind of spirit here, and instead, this is it just coming to them, trying to play up their fear a little bit more before it ultimately devours all of them. But again, for the folks that hate it, I think there is a very obvious plan here, and that Pennywise is just trying to raise the fear level of all of these kids before he ultimately ends up killing most of them, with the exception of Will Hanlon. So I'm excited to see the way that that kind of builds out here in this case. I mean, out of the 3 episodes we've had thus far, I will say that this is the most interaction, it seems, with Pennywise that we've gotten, but a lot of folks seem very disappointed in this, and maybe that's because up until now, the first 2 episodes only gave us brief glimpses and appearances and connections to Pennywise, no matter who it was ultimately taking out. And this episode seems so entrenched with showing Pennywise and it being able to terrify anybody and anything that's investigating it. Honestly, it moved the plot along really, really well here, and the military now has a general idea that they're facing off against something that really does not want to be utilized by them in the least bit, and these kids also now have their apparent proof that they think they need. Obviously, that's not going to work out too quickly, too easily for them to get Ronnie's dad here out of jail, but we have a good basis to continue on here from it. So the fact that we're moving just slightly halfway through the season at this point, obviously we're gonna have some big blow-ups, and the fact that we got to see a glimpse of the clown here in this episode basically means that we're guaranteed that we're gonna see Pennywise in the full clown form here in the next episode or 2. I have to imagine it's not gonna be much further than that. But what I will add on top of that as well is that right now, the stakes are back to not feeling as high as they were after we had seen that first episode. And we might be at the point to where we need another death here from some of the characters that we're following along to raise those stakes again. And I hate to say it, but right now it really feels like Rich, Will Hanlon's new friend, is the one who's going to end up biting it out of anybody that we've seen so far. I could see it being Leroy Hanlon's partner who came along with him on this mission here to Derry. That's a very strong possibility as well. But the way that Pennywise works, it would make a lot more sense that Rich is the one getting taken out. And the fact that we saw in that second episode, Rich has a crush on Marge, and Marge had the deadlights, or a reflection of the deadlights there in her eyes. That has to mean something, and unfortunately, I think we are barreling very, very close to Rich meeting his eventual end here on this series. So I am curious from all of you where you see this going right now. We have the 4th episode premiering here in just a bit. I'm posting this here on Sunday the 16th, so this is going to come out right as we're watching episode 4, but I'm very curious where y'all stand at right now. Who's the next one to get taken out here in Welcome to Derry? What do we think is going to happen with Dick Hallorann and Pennywise as well? And on top of that, one other thing as well is the fact that Hallorann mentions here to Francis Shaw that he needs a place that him and other black soldiers have the ability to hang out at, which in the books we know leads to the Black Spot, which very much involves the Hallorann family and not the Hallorann family, the Hanlon family, and an encounter with Pennywise, because Pennywise ultimately ends up burning this bar down. So I'm curious to see if this is the episode where we see the Black Spot get built up here in episode 4. We'll see though. Y'all let me know in the comment section what you're feeling about Welcome to Derry so far. For those y'all that hate it, now you see it, I want to hear specifically why. Did you not gel with the ghosts and the spirits that Pennywise was conjuring here around these kids? Let me know in the comment section. And of course, get subscribed to my Linktree, as that's the best way to stay on top of all my coverage of season 1 here of Welcome to Derry and so much other horror content as well. You can do that by going to linktr.ee/T scary movie. If you get subscribed, that's going to give you access to the YouTube page for video versions of the show, your favorite podcasting platforms for the audio-only versions of the show, my Letterboxd page for written reviews and movie rankings throughout the year, my TikTok page for short horror content including reviews, premieres, and news, my Twitch page for horror gaming including Phasmophobia, and my Fangoria shop page where you can enjoy a 20% discount off anything in the Fangoria shop. Take advantage of that, y'all. Hit that subscribe button here. This week coming up, we're going to have another look here at episode 4 of Welcome to Derry. We are going to get into the Talamasca as well, too. We got another episode of the Creep Tapes coming up. We're going to talk the Toxic Avenger. We're going to talk Street Trash. And I have a number of horror shorts that we're going to be checking out here as well, too. So a lot of really good stuff coming up this week that I do not want y'all to miss out on at all. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button. But that's it for me tonight. My name is T. We're talking scary movies. Stay scared.